Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Book Talks with Yo. My name is Yoanna and today I'm sharing with you some character development exercises. We've been talking a lot about characters and character story arcs on this channel, but this is because they are one of the most important ingredients of your story. Yes, the plot is important as well, and without a plot there is no book. But as well as that, this is equally true for characters as well. Because without characters, there is no one to act out your story. So there is essentially no plot and no book at all. But instead of giving you some more advice on writing compelling and multi-layered characters or creating strong and interesting character arcs for them, I decided to instead share with you some writing exercises that I've tried previously and that have helped me when it comes to developing my own characters. And don't worry, I won't talk your heads off about character profile sheets just this one time. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video and talk about those exercises. The first exercise is to make the Proust Questionnaire. And if you haven't heard about this, this is essentially a questionnaire that is inspired or was created by the French writer Marcel Proust. And he believed that in answering those questions, a person reveals their true nature, their true personality. So it is a great exercise to do this questionnaire, but not for yourself, but for your characters. And because those questions are usually asked in interviews, it is also fun to make it in the form of an interview. So you are interviewing your characters and you're asking them questions about what is their biggest regret, what is their most treasured possession, their biggest extravagance, and so on and so forth. There are 35 questions in total, and you can easily find them by just typing the Proust Questionnaire, so don't worry about this now. And I know that it sounds like a lot of work, because 35 questions are a lot, and there's a lot of thinking behind some of those, but it is still very important, and I can't really stress enough how useful and how, even it can be fun. It is very useful, but it can also be very fun for your story. And although you think that you are not going to use all this information, you're probably not going to use all of this, but this will help you see your characters as real people with their own likes and dislikes and quirks and everything, peculiarities. But making it in the form of an interview just makes it more fun. Like, imagine they're on a talk show, just be creative with it, have fun with it. Imagine you're a host and you're interviewing those characters. They might be celebrities or something like this. It is a lot of work, but it is nice. And I tried it for my previous book with the 10 characters. And although it was a lot of work doing all those 35 questions for 10 characters, I ended up using a lot of things for this interview that I didn't initially think that I would use. The next advice is one of my favorites, and this is to create a timeline for your character's life. And essentially what I mean is that in order to see your characters as real people, which is what we want, you have to visualize their whole life. You can't just see the segment that appears in your story. You have to be able to see them as real people who have had lives before and will continue to have a life after the story. I know that it sounds a bit crazy, but hear me out. So what I usually do with this is I use a corkboard and I write on sticky notes or notes that I can pin different moments from my character's life, from her early or his early years to their presence in the story. So I write just moments that happened before the story starts, and I write them on sticky notes or pin notes in order to be able to move them around if I need to do that later. And it sounds again a bit excessive, but I promise you it is fun to do, and it might prove very useful after this. And yes, you probably won't be using all of those moments, but some of them you might include as flashbacks if you need them, and it's good to have them figured out before you start writing. And as is in real life, not every single thing that happens has a big, huge significance for who we are as people. But that would be true for your characters as well. So after you're done with your whole timeline, I've like tried to include at least I don't know, 15 sounds like a decent number of things that happen to those characters. And after you've done this, go back and choose around 5-ish. You can choose more or less, of course, but 5-ish sounds good to me. You can choose 5-ish, as I said, moments that really shaped who your character is, really shaped their personality. You can choose moments that created their biggest flaws or their biggest fears or that made them want to achieve something. You will see what works for your character and for your story, but it is very nice to have those moments, as in that way you will really start seeing your character as a real person, which will therefore help your readers see them as real people as well. And also, as well as that, you will be able to create characters who are so strong and fleshed out and multi-layered, and they will have a reason for being the person they are, and you will know this reason. A very interesting exercise that I've read about on Reedsi's blog, and I've tried for only one of my characters once, but I'll sure try it again because it was a fun experience. And this is to put your character through somewhat of a moral dilemma and see what they would do and how they would react to this. And usually, you know how in real life, the most revealing situations are high stakes situations of high stakes and dangerous situations that really show what a person is like and are very, very revealing for their true personality. And because this is true for real life, this is also true for your characters. So a fun exercise is to put your character in such high stakes situation and see what they would do. And a good starting point for this is to use the classic moral dilemmas like the runaway trolley, the overloaded lifeboat, I think there was one of the deliberate infection, the submarine crew, and there are many more that I just cannot think of right now, but you can easily find them online. And just put your character to one of those situations. In all of those, usually they have to take a quick decision and they have to sacrifice and save people. And be really careful to think about your character, not like yourself, and see what decision they would make, even if it's different than the one you would take. And try to note down the thoughts that are going inside their head and the things they are thinking about while having to take this decision. And as I said, be careful to distinguish between your opinion and your character's opinion. And if you're able to do that, it might be a very fun thing to do, and it might show you things about your characters that you didn't even know. The next exercise is another favorite of mine, and this is to have other people talk about your character. And this is one of the most useful things and one that I swear by and I've been using for pretty much as long as I can remember. I think I've used it for all of my characters for all of my projects so far. And what I mean by this is that you can choose a few different people who are going to talk about the way they see your character. As in real life, sometimes the way we view ourselves and the way we think about ourselves is quite different than the way other people see us and the way other people talk about us. So this applies for characters as well, and it is interesting and might be very insightful to see how other people would see your character. And you can do this in both ways. You can either just take some notes on the way you think those type of people, other people would see your character, or what is more fun and the one I usually prefer is to imagine that your character and those other people are in some sort of a reality TV show and that those other people are talking to a camera, something like Big Brother. They're talking to a camera and they're discussing your character. And this is very fun because they will be very honest and they will say whatever they think about your character. And in order for this to be effective, you should choose people who are different from one another and that know your character in a different way. You might choose someone who is a family member, a friend, a colleague, and someone who barely knows them. I just have a few different perspectives so you can see how different people view your character. And yeah, this is one that, as I said, I swear by, and it's so fun and I love it because when I'm feeling stuck, it helps me and it is very helpful for when I'm trying to figure out what my characters are actually like. Next is to use prompts to put your characters in various situations and see what they would do. And I love this one. I don't use it that often, but I still like it, and it's still a very fun thing to do. So you can choose just a random prompt and put your character in the situation. It might be very different from your story. It might have something to do with your story. You're free to choose whatever you want. And sometimes, especially if you take your character outside of their usual setting and outside of their comfort zone, it is very fun to see how they would act in certain cases, how they would react to certain things, and it helps you get to know them better. And another thing that this helps you with is that it creates fun and bizarre situations sometimes. Honestly, some of those prompts are just crazy. You can find them online. There are hundreds and thousands of them, so don't worry about those. Just pick a random one and go with it and just have fun. And really helps me when I'm feeling stuck. So this is another useful exercise if you're experiencing a writer's block or just a creative block. It helps you get unstuck, and it helps you view your characters in a different light. Next one is an exercise that I've mentioned before in my video about creating compelling characters, and this is to make a personality test for your characters. And I know that it might seem kind of silly to do so, but just for a moment, imagine that you are your character. Think like them, act like them, just know like yourself, just like them for a moment, and take one personality test. I like taking the 16 personalities one because this is the one I find the most accurate, and I've done this for I think all of my characters so far from all my works, and something I enjoy doing, something from my research process, from my plotting process that I later end up using for my character profile sheets. Okay, I promise that I won't mention them, but that was just a slip up. That was a tiny slip up. But yeah, what I do is I take a test. I imagine that I am that character. I do my best to think like them and answer the questions like them, and then based on the results, I see how a person like my character would react in real life situations and how they would act, how they would talk in certain scenarios, which is really helpful in order to make them feel like real people. And I know that I said that I used the 16 personalities one, but there are so many personality tests. So if this one doesn't work for you, if the structure is too rigid or it's too detailed for you, just use another one. There are so many that you can find online. The next exercise is actually the one that I haven't tried yet myself, but I've been wanting to try it, and I'm planning to do so for one of my characters for my current writing project. And this is to have your character write a letter to their younger self. And this is a very nice experience, and I don't know about you. I don't know whether you've tried writing such a letter to yourself, a letter to your younger self, but I've done a couple of times, and it's always been a very insightful, very interesting experience. So I'm curious to see how that would work out for my character. And essentially, just get your character to sit down at the desk or whatever they use and write a letter to their younger self. And note down how they address their past self, what changes have happened in their life, what regrets do they share, how much they've changed as people, just everything that they tell their past self. And remember to write in your character's perspective, and keep in the back of your mind all their personality traits, as this is essentially what will make this letter really from their perspective. And as I said again, you never know when you might need a good letter to include in your story, or at least bits of it, so you're not wasting your time. It might be useful later. Next one is a fun little exercise that I like to do sometimes, not very often, but sometimes, and this is to describe one normal day, like one ordinary day in your character's life. And this one is pretty self-explanatory, so basically you just describe one ordinary day from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep, and tell us what they would do in that day, in the days when they don't have to really follow your story plan, so they're just one normal day. And you can also do that from their perspective, which is another fun way to show us how that character would make such mundane and ordinary tasks like going to the supermarket or paying their bills interesting. And As I said, it is not something you do very often because it's not that time consuming because it doesn't have to be long, it can be just a page, but it is still something I do from time to time because I find it fun, and it really depends on my type of story. If I'm writing, because I'm mostly writing contemporary, so it is useful to have this figured out somehow, because this helps me see what they will do between certain moments and sometimes includes stuff of those. So yeah, it is a fun little exercise to try. The next exercise is kind of similar to the previous two, and this is to journal from the perspective of your character. I know that this sounds like a lot of work, but I promise you it's one of the best ways to really get to know your character, get inside their head and know what they're feeling, what they're thinking, just know everything about them. And just imagine that you're your character, think about them, act like them again, and write a page or 2 or 3, however time you have. Just write a few pages in your journal or just an imaginary journal from the perspective of that character. And note down the things they talk about, the way they're dressed. This journal is, are they talking to a friend as if they are talking to a friend, or are they speaking in a more poetic style? Just see the way they are speaking in this diary, the things in this journal, the things they're talking about, the way they're doing so. Are they comfortable doing this, or are they in denial of something? Are they happy? And just everything like this. And as I said, it is a lot of work, but it might be one of the most useful things to do. And last but not least, is a great exercise that you can use for all your characters in a certain project simultaneously, and this is to take them out for dinner. Yes, quite literally, just take them outside of the context of your story and put them on a table at some restaurant or whatever to have dinner. Just write this separate scene that has nothing to do with the context of your story. And why is this a great idea? This is because you're going to show us whether your characters can interact and they can exist outside of your main story. You can show us how they are talking to each other, are they comfortable in each other's company, what are they eating, and so on and so forth. Just imagine that they're having dinner and describe this. And the reason we are doing this is because if you have created strong, developed, and multi-layered characters, they should be able to exist outside of the context of your story just as well as they do in your story. This is a fun exercise that I did for my book with the 10 characters. I had them in a completely different setting, in a completely different time. The situation is different from the one in the main book, and it was a fun experience. I loved how they interacted, and I did this before my first round of edits, so this helped me add certain phrases or work more on certain relationships. So this is one of the greatest exercises for more than one character that I have ever found. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up today's video. I really hope you enjoyed watching, and if you did, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on my new videos. Please let me know down in the comments what are some of your favorite writing exercises for character development or just in general. And yeah, thank you again for watching, and I really hope to see you all next time. Until then, have a smiley week. Bye!